something I'm really proud of, because I've been saying it. What do you have to lose? African American unemployment is at its lowest level ever recorded. That was President Trump Thursday, continuing, as I suggested before the break, to ride the coattails of his predecessor, President Barack Obama, in claiming that his policies are to be thanked for the record low unemployment numbers among Black Americans. A fallacy easily dissolved when you look at when the trend started, and as you can see, it was in January of last year. Joining me now is former acting Secretary of Labor under President Obama, Seth Harris. Thank you, former Secretary Harris. Let's go right to it. President Trump is trying to tell people that he is responsible for record low African American unemployment. Is that any way, shape, or form even possibly true?
It's not, Rev. We've had 87 consecutive months of job growth in the United States dating back to 2010. You may remember that you and I used to talk about the jobs numbers back when I was the President Obama's Secretary of Labor.
You used to come on my radio show every month and report. Then Perez would after you. I remember.
Absolutely right. And so we've had long-term recovery from the Great Recession that President Obama led, but he was helped by Democrats in Congress who passed the largest stimulus bill in American history. And it's important to remember that even though President Trump is talking about how low African American unemployment is now, and that's true, it's still almost double the unemployment of white Americans. We still have structural problems in our economy that are causing African Americans to still face a disadvantage in the labor market, and we still have a lot of work to do. And let me say, I see no evidence at all that President Trump is doing the hard work that's required to fix that problem.
Now, we saw the decline. First of all, President Obama came in, the whole economy was on very shaky ground. He recovered the economy, brought unemployment down, and brought African American unemployment way down. And Mr. Trump inherited an economy that was in full recovery for blacks and whites from President Obama. Now he's taking credit for picking up somebody at the end of a trip that somebody else drove the trip. But at the same time, he has no plans and, in fact, has created a climate that would never, ever make black unemployment and black employment equal to whites, because he has said it very candidly that he really has no agenda for blacks. His agenda is, what do you have to lose? I guess civil rights and other rights, criminal justice reform and all, I guess in his mind is nothing to lose, is everything when you've had to face a double standard.
You're exactly right, Rev. There's no agenda for the African-American community, no economic agenda in particular. If you look at the tax bill, for example, that President Trump is taking credit for, 80% of the benefits of that bill flow to the wealthiest Americans and wealthy corporations. And we're already seeing evidence that those corporations are not going to take that money that Trump is handing to them. He's going to borrow it from the Chinese and hand it to wealthy corporations, that they're going to turn that into the kind of middle wage, middle skill, middle class jobs that we desperately need in this country. What we need more than anything else is for high school graduates and folks with just a little bit of college to be able to get a job that will support their family, allow them to save money for retirement, and allow them some kind of job security. Now, we could get that with investments in the public sector, putting people to work as EMTs, cops, firefighters, teachers, nurses, and we could do it with investments in infrastructure. Now, the president promised us $1 trillion investment in infrastructure. We haven't heard a word about it because...
And we've not only heard a word, we've not seen whether they're going to use minority-owned firms, including African-American firms, whether or not they're going to be targeted in areas where we need infrastructure redevelopment in black communities. where's the infrastructure? You can have $1 trillion worth of infrastructure and never hit the communities that are most impacted, that have the most environmental concerns. So while he's doing all this boasting, Nixon had a black capitalism plan. Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Bush Jr., they all had a black agenda that they would put out, even if we didn't agree with it, and many times I and others protested it. There is no agenda here. It's all empty rhetoric.
I agree with you completely, Rev. And in our hometown of New York, there's a proposal for a new Hudson River Tunnel, right? That's desperately needed because Amtrak and mass transportation in New York is really struggling because you can't get trains under the Hudson River with the outdated tunnels that they're using.
Right.
This is just common sense. Donald Trump is not going to provide the money that's necessary for that plan. That's a place where you could put a lot of African Americans, a lot of middle-class workers and low-wage workers to work building those tunnels, but he's not planning to do that.
Well, he knows about it because he used to have his name on some buildings right on the Hudson, and those in those buildings now are having meetings saying, please take his name down. But why put money there, Seth, when you can just take credit for the guy that did everything that you're taking credit for?
No, that's precisely right.
President, thank you, Secretary.
Right.
Seth Harris, good to talk to you.
Coming up, good seeing you.
While President Trump has talked about prison reform, I'll show you why hope really lies at the local level and not in Washington. This is Politics Nation.